You'd think the third richest man in the world might have his own chauffeur, but not Warren Buffett. He prefers being in the driver's seat.
Do any of your billionaire friends ever joke with you about the Cadillac and that you're driving and not something flashier?
No, they know me pretty well.
On a cold winter morning, Buffett chauffeured me around his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska, pointing out all the hot spots.
This is the McDonald's I go to frequently.
So what do you have at McDonald's?
Probably 3 times out of 4 I get a sausage McMuffin. But then at lunchtime I get a quarter pounder and fries.
A modest meal for a man worth some $46 billion. His humble tastes have humble origins.
Yeah, well, that is true. It was a Sears Roebuck house, and in those days they called it Sears Roebuck, not Sears.
Buffett took us to his childhood home.
My dad bought it in 1925. He bought it about 2 weeks before he was going to get married. He paid $55 a month on his mortgage.
55
a month.
A month.
Yeah, on the mortgage.
Buffett since moved, but says his new home is no palace either.
I could buy any house in the world, and I don't want any other house than the one I'm in. You know, and that house is in a middle-class neighborhood. I'm happy in a pair of khakis and a sweater, so I don't need fancy clothes. I don't need fancy food.
Do you have an iPad?
I do not have an iPad.
iPhone?
No.
He prefers books and reads avidly. Even as a boy, Buffett, whose father started a small stock brokerage, devoured anything he could find on money.
I bought my first stock when I was 11.
Which is incredible, that at 11 years old you were buying your first stock.
Well, I would have bought it sooner, but I didn't have the money.
I think that is an answer to that myth, and it is that time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And I'm absolutely convinced that the forces of ill will in our nation, the extreme rightists in our nation, have often used time much more effectively than the forces of goodwill. And it may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words of the bad people and the violent actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Somewhere we must come to see that social progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. And so we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
I'm so in love with you. This is your victory. Now, I know you didn't do this just to win an election. And I know you didn't do it for me. You did it because you understand the enormity of the task that lies ahead. But my main message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. They had their entire lives ahead of them. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, kids of their own. Among the fallen were also teachers, men and women who devoted their lives to helping our children fulfill their dreams. So our hearts are broken today. It's the idea held by generations of citizens who believe that America is a constant work in progress, who believe that loving this country requires more than singing its praises or avoiding uncomfortable truths. It requires the occasional disruption, the willingness to speak out for what is right, to shake up the status quo. That's America.
Okay, we're here in life class again after last night, knowing when you know better, you do better. We're ready to move on to what I think is another powerful lesson that I started to get when I was a really young girl, having been raised by my grandmother, and then at 6 years old being separated from my grandmother, being moved to Milwaukee and suddenly in a foreign environment for myself. I remember walking into that new space and recognizing that in many ways I was alone, which is a terrible feeling if you're 6 years old. But I have always had the deep understanding for myself that if anything was going to move forward in my life, that I was going to have to be responsible for making that happen. And I know that to be true now and can articulate it as you are responsible for your life. And if you're sitting around waiting on somebody to save you, to fix you, to even help you, you are wasting your time, because only you have the power to take responsibility to move your life forward. And the sooner you get that, the sooner your life gets into gear.
When it's far out, it sort of spins slowly, and then as it gets closer, it spins faster and faster. And if you were to start at the bottom of the coin funnel and you wanted to exit, you'd spin it horizontally, and it would spin out, and that's really how you get to orbit. Yeah. So
how does
the
that
gravity
relate
well
to
is like a funnel.
Why you want to land on a ship in the ocean?
Because in order to get to orbit, all that matters is your horizontal velocity. Your altitude doesn't really matter. In fact, the force of gravity at say the sort of nominal boundary of space, 100 kilometers, is almost exactly the same as it is on the surface of the Earth. It's like if it's a few percent lower than the surface of the Earth. So in order to go up and stay up, the only thing that matters is how fast are you going horizontal to the Earth's surface. So you have that outward radial acceleration, or think of it like maybe like tetherball or something like that. It's really that outward acceleration is the thing that matters.